Hello, everyone. I'm Michael Lean, head of new sales at Bristlecone. I have with me Manish and Raja. Manish leads our technology consulting practice, and Raja is the head of our technology business unit here at Bristlecone. Today, we're going to be talking about Edtech, specifically Edtech 4.0. And what I have written here is that Edtech incumbents must transform or die. That's what we're going to be talking about today, how new age companies are outpacing industry leaders. And if these industry leaders don't take concrete steps towards this industry 4.0 or EdTech 4.0 that we're talking about today, they will quickly become obsolete. Quickly being a relative term, it might take a few years, but there's action that needs to be taken. So Raja, I want you to sort of set the stage for us. What is going on in the world of EdTech?
Michael, thank you very much for this conversation. Always enjoy these discussions. They should innovate or die, probably a dramatic statement, but I know you like dramatics a little bit. Yes, there is a big transformation and big opportunity going on in the EdTech space. There has been a secular trend of innovation and transformation in that space, even over the last 3 or 4 years, I would say. And that's been substantially accelerated by what we've seen with COVID. Today, the overall EdTech space is about $400 billion in valuation and in revenues. And the market has grown or accelerated from about 12 to 13% CAGR pre-COVID to 16 to 17% CAGR post-COVID. And even before COVID, there's been this conversation about how do we bring both EdTechs and the education publishing industry into the Web 3.0 space, and how do we create personalization? How do we create a user experience that students and teachers are used to today? These have been conversations that have been going on for some time. For example, why do you need to have the same curriculum for every student who's in class? Why can't we personalize? Similarly, why do we need to have a 4-year graduation for all bachelor's degrees? Who decided it has to be 4 years? So these conversations have been going on. And interestingly, it's not as if there is not enough technology there. It's almost like there is too much. I recently heard that the average K-12 teacher has to manage 100 different logins. That's 100 different tools to manage their classwork. But even that's not working very well. Bring COVID into the mix, and suddenly every student out there has understood the value of remote learning, is comfortable with remote learning. And because of all of this, what's now happened is there's almost 2 different subsectors within the EdTech space. There are the incumbents who've traditionally been publishers or have been providing technology to the K-12 market, who are struggling to catch up. How do you leverage analytics and AI to create a personalized experience? How do you leverage technologies like AR, VR to create a next generation user experience? How do you use the power of cloud to create scalability and security? All these are challenges which they are facing, but at the same time, they realize that there's a massive market out there. Now you have this other set of players.
Just real quick, when you say catch up, so they're catching up to these new age players, these niche people have emerged into the market who I guess are just giving better user experiences. Is this what it's all about? It's you have these old incumbents that can kind of do whatever they want, but then they're now chasing these new young guys, companies that are just better experiences, and there's a big gap. What do you mean by catch up?
It's not just user experience. It's the ability to transform the education space the way the stakeholders in that space are looking for, whether they are teachers or they are students, or their parents for that matter. So you have these traditional edtechs and education publishers who've been doing things one way, and they realize that either there's a big opportunity out there or they're going to get overtaken by somebody else, like you said, innovate or die. And who's this somebody else? You have the large platform players like a Google or a Microsoft or an Apple who have significantly invested into EdTech. The Google Classroom product got a lot of traction during COVID. And you also have startups who garnered enormous valuations, both in developing markets, emerging markets, as well as in the US. And those valuations have grown much faster than those of the traditional edtechs. So there's clearly the market traction which has been garnered by this new generation set of companies who at the same time don't have the domain depth or content that the traditional edtechs and publishers have. So they have a lot of great advantages, and they need to quickly couple that with the right technology transformation to continue to ride this wave, to continue to be leaders in the education technology space. That's really where we are now. There's this one set of education technology and publishers who have the domain depth, who have content, but are struggling to make that technology transformation. And they do realize it. There's the other set who are startups and the large platform players who are realizing that this is a market that's ripe for a transformation, are focusing there. And we'll have to see who's going to really lead in that market going forward.
So, speaking about the incumbents right now, what does that transformation look like? If you had to break it down, what is the journey that they're facing ahead if they want to be successful and staying relevant in this market?
That's a very good question, Michael. I'll, of course, offer my thoughts and then Manish can jump in there as well. I think this is a classic question of a set of industry players who have a lot of strengths, who have the domain depth, who have the mind share of the market that they are playing in, both the students as well as the education industry and the K-12s or higher eds. But at the same time, they are now trying to figure out how to appeal to the changing expectations of that market. Mm-hmm. Today, the student is expecting that they should get a personalized experience. They're used to that experience from Facebook or from Roblox or TikTok or wherever else. So why should I not get a similar experience where my curriculum is tailored to my interests? And that helps them learn faster as well. So how do you use all of this enormous data that you have as an incumbent edtech player about user behavior, about students' progression? How do you leverage all that and create insights? And how do you then translate that insight into an individualized experience for each user? That's one big challenge or one big area of transformation. Mm-hmm. That's the insights-led track. Then
so it's using your data to generate the insights, which ultimately personalizes the experience for a better end experience for the stakeholders, parents, students, teachers. That's one. Okay.
That's one track. The other is how do you use the power of the cloud? These are edtechs who have traditionally followed an on-premise model or a limited online model, but not really leveraging the entire scalability and security. There have been multiple security breaches in the edtech industry over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's actually a big conversation point in the industry. How do you leverage the power of hyperscalers and the power of cloud to offer a rapidly scalable experience where everybody has the opportunity to learn remotely or in classrooms? How do you make that secure? And how do you make that rapidly configurable? That's a track with cloud. And then you have a third track, which is about the user experience itself. How do you leverage things like AR, VR, which today, to be very frank, the K-12 market is perhaps more familiar than anybody else with AR, VR technologies, very comfortable using them because of Oculus and so on. Have the edtechs figured out how to use that? Probably not. But do the Googles and the Microsofts and the Apples know how to use those technologies? Yes, they do. Now, who's going to adopt what is the question. Now, having said all this, there is also a completely different transformation which many of the publishers are going through. They recognize that from a paper-based textbook and course material situation, they have to move to completely digital, and they are on that transformation. At the same time, while they do that, how do they optimize their paper supply chain for efficiency as well as cost while they are in the process of making that digital transformation. So these are all fascinating elements of this marketplace, which is in the middle of a major transformation. The only question is who will end up dominating, who will be the winners, and who will be the laggards.
Interesting. So, and I know, Manish, we're working with one client right now on that fourth element that Raja was telling us about, which is the transformation of the supply chain for an incumbent publisher, helping them to get into the digital world. Can you talk a little bit about the concrete steps this incumbent needed to take to go on their journey?
No, absolutely. Thank you, Michael. I think Raja very well covered of how different players are kind of transforming this particular journey, how they're traversing. In terms of this particular client, it's a assessment and education provider in the space of like advanced K-12 plus. And in this particular case, if we observe, there are a lot of traditional publishing companies or education companies that have relied on the Education 2.0 and 3.0 framework, where everything was a lot more paper-centric, in-person, sitting in a classroom or a test center and kind of appearing on a paper-based test, right? But as I think we are seeing this transformation happening from traditional educational companies becoming more of an edtech, there's a parallel transformation that's happening in the supply chain. The physical supply chain is gradually shrinking and thereby leaving more room for the digital supply chain. What that means, it's not only the delivery of the things or the content, right? It's not only the learning experience. It essentially all the operations that goes to make sure the delivery of that experience is moving from physical to a digital format. Now, with that particular thing, there comes a kind of a broader scope that someone has to clearly manage around the physical supply chain. What we are trying to do with this particular educational provider is kind of like take an assessment of the current situation and see where is the to-be state going to be looking like, right? And what are the number one steps that you need to do? And Michael, one thing that would happen is there'll be no complete immediate swap of a physical supply chain with the digital. It will be a gradual shrinkage of the physical, but you still have to manage the physical supply chain, and that too in this era of COVID, right? So a lot of physical supply chains are disrupted because of this COVID. And as we kind of parallel path this reduction of the supply chain where we have to constantly manage the risk, we also need to plan for how the digital supply chain going to look like. And that is where we are helping this particular client of ours in terms of kind of carving out a roadmap of where they stand today, where they should be tomorrow, and along this journey, what are the kind of key capabilities around digital experience and all those kind of capabilities are needed. So at the end, it's essentially a roadmap that's going to be spending about 2 to 3 years, but the client itself would see them moving from a physical educational provider, assessment provider to more of a digital experience-led and immersive learning experience provider.
We can be a reliable partner and handhold throughout the journey, but are there small project-based initiatives that can help a company go along this path without having to jump all in with a partner right off the bat?
No, definitely, Michael. I think there's always a means to a particular thing. And I think as we kind of discuss a lot, there's a transformation journey. I think the very first step that I would recommend most of these educational providers to be taking is to do an independent assessment of their current state. Because knowing where you stand today is going to be the right way to calibrate what are the next steps going to be looking like and what they should be for an ideal end state. So assessment or discovery engagement is where we kind of look at the enterprise construct, how mature they are in terms of kind of publishing capabilities, how mature in terms of like distribution experience. And based on a comprehensive evaluation of their current state, we kind of lay out a roadmap. And this roadmap could be structured around processes, technologies, experience. There'll be pieces of each of these artifacts, but essentially starting with knowing what are the needs that needs to be done across along the way is the right starting point for these companies.
Great. Well, Manish, Raja, I want to thank you for your time. This was a wonderful discussion about the overall picture of the EdTech incumbents and what they're facing. I hope to continue this conversation with both of you because we could go off of those 4 tracks, Raja, that you outlined in greater depth. But I think this was an excellent start to a really interesting discussion. So I want to thank you guys for your time.